Hey everyone, welcome back to Gizmo China. If you haven't already tuned into our channel, welcome. I'm Nadine, and today we're going to go into a different kind of review. We have been used to seeing different kinds of new technologies on the mainstream flagships, but this time, Redmi has changed our imagination with its newly released Redmi Note 8 Pro, a true budget phone with an outstanding camera combination. So a few months ago, Samsung released its new phone camera sensor, the GW1 sensor, with a 64-megapixel resolution. After its release, the competition was on among smartphone producers. And the winner we have on our hands today, the Redmi Note 8 Pro, the first smartphone with the 64-megapixel resolution camera. Cameras are not the only one highlight for the Redmi Note 8 Pro. The Note 8 Pro is also the first phone running the MTK Helio G90T CPU. The Helio G90T is a high-performance CPU targeted at the gaming market. This time we will divide the full review into two sections. We will bring you a camera review in this video, and in the next video, we will show you our test results on its gaming performance. Please stay watching and subscribe to our channel, we would really appreciate it. The vertical arrangement of cameras is aesthetically nice on the Redmi K20 series, and it's pretty smart that the fingerprint reader is right at the bottom of the vertical arrangement, which is one of the most elegant designs with a rear fingerprint reader that we've seen. The upgrade of the fingerprint reader achieves a smaller size with super fast unlock experience. A problem is that the vertical bar is a bit bumpy, which has quite a similar hand-on feeling to the design of the OnePlus 7. Though it's placed vertically on the center top position, the phone does wobble a bit when it's on a flat surface like a table. From top to bottom, there is the first 2-megapixel portrait camera, the second primary 64-megapixel Samsung camera with f1.89 aperture, the third 8-megapixel wide-angle camera, and the last camera is right below the flashlight, which is a 2-megapixel macro camera. We have already seen the first dual camera combination on the Realme 5 Pro. So, to get a full picture of how powerful the 64-megapixel resolution can be, we're going to do a full comparison between the Redmi Note 8 Pro, the Realme 5 Pro, and the Huawei P30 Pro. Let's see, when facing its strongest competitor and the industrial benchmark, how far the Redmi Note 8 Pro can go. Under good light conditions, the sample shot by the Redmi Note 8 Pro generally has a great color reproduction when comparing it to the other two. It reserves the pretty true tone, but uses an AI recognition at the same time to slightly make the sample look more dramatic. But it doesn't mean the Huawei P30 Pro and Realme 5 Pro do a poor job on the color presentation. From this group of samples, we turn off the color filter of the P30 Pro's camera app and adding a chroma boost effect on the Realme 5 Pro. Actually, the P30 Pro shows a better reproduction no matter the details or the contrast exposure, while for the Realme 5 Pro, with the boost effect, the images show a greater dramatic effect, having rich details and high saturated colors of the bright parts. But in the darkness, the images do have a noise problem. Under low light conditions, the P30 Pro shows its advantage at the exposure balance. Both the bright lamps and dark areas have the right exposure and clear details. The Redmi Note 8 Pro, out of our imagination, is not bad as the first machine equipping the latest flagship sensor, though it sometimes got slightly blurry with noise, but not very obviously. The Realme 5 Pro still maintains its dramatic boost style with vivid colors and brighter exposure. From another group of photos of the outdoor buildings, the Realme 5 Pro shows its delightful color layouts with the right application of the chroma boost mode. For those who want to simplify their post-editing works, I would say that the sample shot by the Realme 5 Pro is ready for social media. The other two still maintain their good performance under such good light conditions. An obvious difference here is that the images shot by the P30 Pro presented relatively warm tones, while it's much cooler on the Redmi Note 8 Pro. So generally, we would like to see a close portrait or still life photography on the P30 Pro and have the Note 8 Pro for long shots such as a landscape photography. Because generally warm colors advance in painting or photography and cool colors recede. Such preference was especially shown in the group of high building photos, much cooler on the samples of Redmi Note 8, but better detail of darkness for the samples of the P30 Pro. All these three phones have high-resolution cameras. The Huawei P30 Pro can output the 40 megapixel photos, and the Realme 5 Pro has the mainstream Sony IMX586 with 48 megapixel resolution. While amazingly, the Redmi Note 8 Pro can generate the 64 megapixel photos. The high resolution also means that you need more storage space on your phone. A 40 megapixel photo of the P30 Pro uses up around 8 megabytes. The figure for the Realme 5 Pro is 15 megabytes, and the storage for a 64 megapixel photo shot by the Redmi Note 8 Pro is around 27 megabytes. Most users won't have the high resolution photography on all the time, so make sure it doesn't occupy your daily photo taking. It's no doubt that the 64 megapixel resolution demonstrated its powerful advantage. The pictures shot by the Redmi Note 8 Pro reserved much more detail and got less blurring on the sculpture's surface. Looking at the twine, the 64 megapixel photo caught a clearer surface and detail even though we zoom in so much. Well, the Realme 5 Pro and the Redmi Note 8 Pro both equips a macro camera, which may not be so practical as we test. Although it probably is better and easier to focus on some extremely close subjects, under most conditions, their primary cameras can do much better when shooting close subjects due to better resolution and more natural bokeh effect. For the wide angle, Huawei has a wide angle camera with high resolution, which made it take the lead at this round. From the samples of the other two phones, we actually can find the color deviation to some extent. The Redmi Note 8 Pro seems to be attached with a yellow-based high-contrast filter, while the Realme 5 Pro is more like attaching a green filter. As for their zoom capacity, Huawei P30 Pro has one of the best telephoto cameras you can find in a phone. So here we just want to show you the gap that the other two have with the industrial benchmark. In the 5x zoom-in samples, they both got too much AI adjustment as the sky colors all turned out looking more reddish. The detail that's existing in the Huawei P30 Pro is really remarkable when we saw the fountain. But please notice that both the Realme and Redmi do not equip a telephoto camera, so when it came to the 2x zoom-in competition, things got better. The Realme 5 Pro still maintains a high saturation. In these samples of the water surface, it seems that Redmi applied a radical AI solution when facing a low-light condition, so the sky was reflected remarkably compared to the other two. For the night shooting, all the three phones were pretty confident to put it as a selling point. But from the shooting experience, the Huawei P30 needs you to hold the phone for about 3 more seconds, while the other two require around 2-second holding for shooting multi-photos with different exposure. But judging from the overall brightness improvement and the exposure balance, all the three candidates really did a great job. However, their optimized strategies are quite different. The Realme 5 Pro reserved a pure image without much noise at the center. Redmi Note 8 Pro's sample has much more detail, especially for the brightness due to a reduction of highlight exposure, while for the Huawei P30 Pro it achieved a brightest night photography. Some people may complain that the Huawei has gone too far on it because we just want a night photo. So overall, I still think that the Huawei is still the best, in my opinion. Though the Redmi Note 8 Pro does have the most powerful primary camera. They all do have 4 cameras, but in a way, when we look at it, quantity doesn't mean everything. Because when you're shooting your daily photos, I guess it doesn't really matter how many cameras that you have on your phone because you're not going to be using all of them. Probably just 2 of them at a time. So that's all on our video today for the camera comparisons. In the next video, we'll be bringing you the gaming comparisons. So please stay tuned. We hope that you enjoyed this video, and please don't forget to subscribe. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and we'll be seeing you next time. Thank you from Gizmo China.